Hello everyone. My name is Sharon L, and I'm the host of this podcast. And the podcast has always been yoga therapy for the last 2 years, but I want to change the name to Reclaiming Our Well-Being. I want to have broader conversations with different people from different fields. There's just so many wonderful things going on, and there's so much beauty in this world and in life. And I don't want to be limited just by yoga therapy, even though yoga covers the whole spectrum of life. So hello, everyone. I'm back, and I'm back with Sharon L. Coggan. So I'm really happy that she came back on. Today, we're going to discuss the Hera's journey. So welcome, Sharon. I'm going to introduce you and all your credentials. So Sharon is Harvard and Stanford educated, newly retired clinical associate professor of the University of Denever, Colorado. She was the director of a religious studies program, and she has published a beautiful book called Sacred Disobiedence, a Jungian analysis of the saga of Pan and the devil. And it traces the ancient Greek god Pan. So welcome, Sharon. I'm so glad you're back on.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. I just wanted to talk about, for people who don't know about the Hera's journey, it's the same as the hero's journey, but it's the woman's story, the feminine psyche, the inward journey of the sacred dark psyche, and mysteries that pervade or underlie the physical world and life. So I wanted to just read something from, what's her name? Carolin Myss. Do you know Carolin Myss?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found this a very beautiful analogy. The goal of the human experience is to transform ourselves from beings who long for power in the material world to beings who are empowered from within. This is the heroine's journey. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Like that.
Yeah. I found that years ago, and I was in the middle of my initiation, shall I say, and that really rung true. And I was like, okay, this is what's happening right now.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a heroic journey.
Yes.
Call it a heroic journey because it's going to take heroic effort to get through it.
Yeah.
That's why it's a hero's journey.
Yeah.
So so many words, in our language are masculine words, and then there's a female word that's derived from it. Like actor, actress, or waiter, waitress, or prince, princess, right? So we try to avoid that, because then the feminine side of it is like, derived from the masculine. So we try to use language that's inclusive and that, gives the feminine side her due. So that's why instead of calling it the heroine's journey, heroine is the word,
From hero.
Yeah. Feminized
Exactly.
for hero. But there is a word in ancient Greek that is the female equivalent, and so it's more proper to use that term.
Yes, I was wondering. Hera. But is this not also the wife of Zeus?
Yes, exactly. Her name means heroic.
Wow.
There may have been some in the etymology relating to air, but in any case, Hera is the female hero, and not only is she the name, the wife of Zeus and the queen of heaven, but also the name. Well, in Latin, it's Hercules. Everyone's familiar with a great hero. In the Greek, that's Heracles, and the name means to the glory of Hera. So he's named for Hera. Now, what he is another one of Zeus's bastard children. So always angry that he went off philandering and has children everywhere, right and left. So she punishes some of them, and she is, demanded of Heracles that he meet these labors, the 12 labors of Heracles, and he does it all for the glory of Hera. He does it all to honor and please her. So you wouldn't have the hero Hercules without her. So I'm using the female term Hera, and the Hera's journey then does parallel the hero's journey with some interesting and significant differences.
Interesting and important, very important distinction. Yeah, because I don't know, maybe you can enlighten me on this. Everything I've read about Hera has turned me off her because I'm not a very what do you call that? One of these women who wants to have a husband. I'm not like that. And she's always portrayed as this very jealous wife.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that
Okay.
true? Or can we also just go into that a little bit to?
Yes, and it is very interesting. Now, I'll say just a little bit so I don't get off on that,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
all the gods and goddesses have a history, of course, in ancient Greece. It's all very, very fascinating.
Uh-huh.
Um, and Hera, as we do the research, we find the name, we can trace its roots and so on. So there's an older version of Hera. Now, this is really so interesting. What happens to Hera?
Mhm.
And then the way she becomes portrayed as a nagging bitch. You
Yes, exactly.
What is a bitch? Female dog.
Yeah.
So in the mythology, Hera turns into a female dog, namely a bitch, and hounds Leto, she's a Titaness whom Zeus has had an affair with, and she's pregnant with the twins, Apollo and Artemis. And Hera turns into a bitch, and Leto turns into a wolf. So the dog is chasing the wolf. So she is literally a bitch, a female dog who's angry and all right. So, but the thing is, it's so interesting. I'm coming at this from a Jungian perspective, right? And Jung thinks that the gods are all archetypal patterns. Okay. And Jung has a sort of principle or dynamic how the psyche functions. And he says, on the very first page of his autobiography, it's so great. Memories, Dreams, Reflections. It's his autobiography. And the best way, if people are listening, to get into Jung is to read that. Um, and he says on the very first page, line, he says, everything, it means everything in the psyche seeks to express itself, seeks to come out. Everything in the consciousness seeks expression. And the psyche, too, desires to evolve, to experience itself as a whole. So everything that's in there, including the dark side and everything, wants to come out, okay, in our lives and in the collective life. Always two levels going on with Jungian thought. Well, the interior and the exterior, and then also the individual and the collective. So gods represent the collective elements in the psyche, the archetypes. So anything that gets repressed in the psyche, according to the Jungian model, only inflates, it gets bigger and more powerful, and it distorts. It distorts into a monstrous form. So bogies and monsters in literature are all underneath. They are the expression of some kind of distortion representing some kind of underlying repression. Now, this is seen so clearly in the case of Hera. Okay, so there was an older society in Greece, okay, across Europe. This is probably from the indigenous European history. Okay, so starting in the Neolithic, 7,000 years before Christ,
Mhm.
there was
The Minoans?
what?
Is that the Minoan people?
Yes, the Minoan are probably a branch of what we are calling the indigenous European.
Mm.
They did not speak a language that any modern European languages are. There's only one language group and human group surviving, still speaking their ancient language, that scholars think might be the only living remnant of the people that once covered all of Europe. From Holland, material was found in the Netherlands,
Oh,
all the way down to Greece and, in fact, around the Black Sea. This
yes.
whole civilization in Spain, everything in between, was
Wow.
the native or indigenous Europeans. The only group today to survive are the Basque people.
Yes, I read that. Incredible, isn't it?
This is amazing. They were
Yes.
high enough in the Pyrenees Mountains that civilization, the Indo-Europeans who invade went around them, so they're the only surviving
Escaped.
people once covered all of Europe. And they're so
Wow.
fascinating because they're probably direct descendants of the same people who did the Paleolithic cave paintings between France and Spain. The original Cro-Magnon, the original Homo sapiens, the Basque people are probably direct descendants from them in the same part of the world. So those people once covered all of Europe. The Basque language in between France and Spain is completely unrelated to French or Spanish or any language.
Latin, oh yeah,
Latin, all of those.
Indo-European. Yep.
So the Indo-Europeans didn't come from Europe. They
No.
came from what we call Russia. And they have, migrated down into Europe in waves. Okay. And we see the archaeological record. This civilization across Europe was present from 7,000 from the agricultural, well, it was probably earlier in the Paleolithic, living at the rim of the ice sheet there, which covered northern France. So Holland and all the British Isles were completely under ice. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Under ice. And the rim of the Arctic Circle was northern France.
Yeah, wow.
Paris. Yeah, so no one's living, under the ice. In any case, 7,000, the agriculture begins, and there's the civilization along the Danube, but across Europe. Now they're invaded repeatedly. You see, so the Indo-Europeans then take over, who go down into India. The Aryans of India, they call themselves, and Iran is the same name as Aryan, and they come across into Europe. Ireland is the same name as Aryan.
Yes.
Ireland, Iran. That's the name they call themselves. They call them from India, European. So they wipe out the indigenous Europeans, who then are in a refugee, situation. So the modern people of Southern Europe, Italian, Greece, Spanish, they are a different genotype, right? They very different from the Nordic, blonde, blue-eyed, right? Genotype. So the olive skin, Mediterranean type, as we sometimes call it, right? That's all that's left, the genetic markers of the indigenous European.
Wow.
That's where they ran down to as a refugee, and then into the islands. So all of these people, these were called people of the sea, who stream across down into the Middle East. Minoa is the best known with a literature that nobody can still decipher and read.
Yes, it's crazy.
It's not Indo-European, and it's not Semitic. It's probably indigenous European. And the Sumerians are probably a branch of that. Look how I got off into that.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, how did we get here? I was trying to find the thread back.
Bring this back to what I meant to talk about. Hera and many of the Greek gods had an earlier representation in this indigenous European world. She was their goddess. And then when the Greeks come in, who are
they bastardized it and made it patriarchal. Yes.
Patriarchy, because we think that the indigenous Europeans were probably a matriarchal society.
Yeah.
The older Hera, and we have evidence about this, we have the hymns to Hera and so on. She was, first of all, she was called a triple goddess in and of herself. So the triple goddess is the maid or virgin, mother, and then crone, the killer goddess, Hecate. Hecate is the old goddess of the underworld from the indigenous European society, more than likely. The Greek god of death in the underworld is Hades, and he is sterile because death is sterile. Well, death is sterile to the pastoral nomadic peoples who sweep in, not to the agriculturalists. Death is always a prelude to rebirth, right, transformation. So the goddess of the underworld is a fertility goddess.
Wow.
Eternally pregnant with the new spring, So Hera was a triple goddess in and of herself. She had 3 titles. She was called Hera, I forget the first one.
Come back.
And Hera, fulfilled as the wife of Zeus, and then Hera Teleia, what's the word? Met her goal, fulfilled, and she's a widow. If Hera is a widow, what does it mean? What happened to Zeus? So the older form of Zeus is a dying and rising god who's killed every year
Yes.
and is born every year again.
Like the story of Asherah and Inanna and Isis.
Exactly. It's a
Yes.
type. This is what Jung means by archetype. It
Yeah.
makes sense as soon as you understand archetypal
Mm.
theory. So Hera was a virginal goddess in and of herself, and by virgin we mean she was a warrior. And as we see her in Homer in the Iliad, she's all over the place in the Iliad and the Odyssey, less so. She and Athena, who is the patriarchy's version of a warrior goddess, the
Mhm.
daughter of Zeus, but the
Yes.
wife of Zeus. So she appears in the Iliad side by side with Athena, warring, in the battle with on the side of the Greeks against the Trojans the whole time. So she is a warrior goddess, and that's
Yes.
her aspect. And then she is wife of Zeus, and then the killer or the widow of Zeus, who then
Wow.
transforms him back into a new baby.
Yes.
So when the patriarchy takes over, these old goddesses were very powerful. So the Greeks, as part of their program of taking over the indigenous population, right,
Mhm.
killing them and chasing them off, intermarrying with them, what they do is impose their religion, of course.
Yeah, and
So
they use
all
the
kinds of
stories,
older
don't they? They use
use
the religions and stories.
the stories and
Yeah.
take them over.
Same
But
with
now,
Christianity. Yeah.
right. Well, Christianity is long yet in the future. This is,
Yeah.
we're talking about 1500 BCE.
I know, but it keeps happening, doesn't it? You're
Sure.
seeing it now, like now they're using governments are using the younger generation's stories as their own spiel when that's not what they mean at all.
Religions always take,
Yes,
take, borrow, steal,
yes.
whatever word to
Manipulate,
use.
use,
But
yeah.
Hera is a really good example of this because when she is absorbed into the Homeric, Olympian order, as we call it, she is made the wife of Zeus. Most of these old goddesses were made the wife of Zeus, wives of Zeus, or his daughters. Like
Mhm.
Aphrodite is the great goddess of Cyprus, who was far predated Zeus. And when the Greek order takes over, she becomes his daughter as well. So most of these goddesses become repressed at that
Yeah.
point, just as parallel to the Greek culture repressing the indigenous culture that from whom they have, stolen their land and their cities and their everything and their gods.
You
So,
see the same thing happening in the Hindu
oh yeah,
stories,
oh
traditions
yeah.
of the goddesses.
So
First
she
they were the power, and then they become a power of one of the gods.
an aspect of one of the gods,
Yes.
right, right. And then Vishnu has millions of faces. Those millions of gods that
Yes.
get assimilated to Vishnu, right, right. When the Aryans first come in, 1500 BCE, the old Dravidian goddesses disappear for 300 years in the
Oh,
archaeological record. Yeah,
wow.
Shiva was a Dravidian god. But in the Indian case, we think the population was always so massive that
Yeah.
the invading Indo-Europeans could never have overcome them. So
No.
they intermixed with them, and that's why the people of northern India look darker skinned because they have intermarried with the native Dravidian people of India, darker skinned Dravidian people, but they are still Aryan speaking a language that's related to English.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
Wait a minute now, I was going somewhere. So
Yeah.
yeah, the goddesses disappear in India and then they return. And
Mhm.
they get assimilated into the Indian religion. But
Mhm.
in Hera's case, similar to Thetis, there are a bunch of older goddesses.
Mhm.
Uh, Zeus first rapes Metis, his aunt, the sister of his mother, Rhea. He
Mhm.
rapes her, so then she's pregnant, and then he's scared of her power, so he swallows her, which is what his father's Kronos or Saturn had.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so he swallows one goddess. Now
Yes.
so he completely assimilates her. So there's a wonderful way of expressing this in an article I read, wonderful article. I'm not sure I remember the author right now. It's called "This is What Has Happened to Woman and to Womanhood,"
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
She is what happened to Metis, swallowed by Zeus. She is shut out, shut down,
Shut
shut
up.
in, shut up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the fate of women
Yeah.
in the patriarchy. All right.
Yes.
So later she was pregnant, right? So when the time is ready, she gives birth inside the belly of Zeus. Of course,
Mhm.
we're speaking in mythic terms. We're not talking about anything literal, as all religion is. Christians and Muslims and Jews have made it literal fact. Jesus
Yeah.
literally rose from the dead. Whereas Jung thinks all religion is speaking this language of myth and symbolism, not literal fact.
Can I
Uh,
just interject? I read something in Karen Armstrong's book,
yes,
History um,
God.
yes, history of God, yes. And she also says that it was only in the last few hundred years that people have started to take these stories as literal, whereas
Yeah.
before everyone knew it's just logical that
Yeah.
there is not this entity sitting there watching us. It is within us and behind everything. It's always there.
The struggle in the early church, and Origen,
Yeah.
one of the great church fathers, said, "If you're going to try to read the Bible and think it's a literal fact, you're in big trouble.
Yes,
It
exactly.
contradicts itself right and left, etc." So
Yeah.
they saw it symbolically.
Yeah.
So in the patriarchy,
Mhm.
oh yes, I was at where Metis gives birth in the belly of Zeus. So
Yes.
she's a completely shut down goddess and consciousness, right? So
Mhm.
the baby travels, she's born from her mother's body, and she travels up the body of Zeus. And Zeus has this raging headache, and the god Hephaestus, Vulcan, is brought in to tap him,
On
make a
his-
hole in his head, and out springs, fully clothed in warrior armor with her full helmet, with a mighty
Yeah.
battle cry, the goddess Athena.
Yes.
So Athena is all for the father, all for the patriarchy. She's the token, goddess who will sing the praises of patriarchy. Okay.
Yes.
We need the men need to be in power and look after us women. So that kind of line, we used to call it the Phyllis Schlafly line.
Oh,
It's the kind of woman the man can stomach. They
yeah.
can stomach. And she is so proud to be the daughter of Zeus. She says she has no mother. So she's a goddess denying, female
Oh,
denying.
yes.
Now,
Yes.
Hera, though, so Metis, lives in there in the belly of Zeus, and she was the goddess who's a trickster, who knows the secrets, the
Ah,
tricks.
yes, she knows his mind.
Yeah,
Yes.
she does. And she continues to give him counsel from within his belly.
Amazing, no?
All this intuition, belly knowledge, gut instinct.
Yes.
So Athena, Zeus is proud of her, and she's the proud warrior goddess. But Hera was exactly that in an older generation of the older society. So the Greeks have swallowed her up, shut her down, shut her in, shut her up. And she represents the distortion. You take and repress the goddess, you're going to generate a distorted, inflated, angry, nasty thing. That's
Yes.
not what Hera was. And
No.
that's the patriarchy's version of Hera, always complaining, bitch, bitch, bitch,
Yeah.
because he's having affairs right and left. And of course, she's never a widow, because that would mean Zeus would die. That's not like Yahweh dies.
Possible. Yeah.
Jesus dies every year, his son, but not the big honcho, right? That would be too much to say Zeus dies every year. So you see, it's an older religion assimilated into a newer one, and Hera inflates into a monstrous, ugly form. She's a
Oh, what a beautiful introduction to Hera. Thank you for clearing that up. I'm sure so many people don't have any inkling of idea that
and
that
we're
is.
trying to cover, yeah, her
Yeah.
ancient significance and her title, Hera, the heroic woman.
Yeah. So important. Yeah.
She, Mhm.
I notice like I'm working now in the mental health with young and mainly women. And you see them all the time when they're uncertain. They just keep saying, I don't know. Or they're quiet, and it's that silencing, that shut up, shut down.
Shut in, shut up, shut
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
That's woman's fate.
yeah.
we had revolution. So 60s and 70s, and we decided, and we, transformed our world, and we're still doing it. It's not like
Yeah.
we're alive,
Yeah.
but interestingly, in Jungian language, the goddesses represent the anima aspect of consciousness, the feminine aspect, and the gods represent the animus or masculine aspect of consciousness. So Athena is Zeus's anima figure. Now, really, Hera is too, but she's a repressed anima. So she becomes a negative mother. So anything repressed gets distorted and inflated, right? So
Yeah.
she, is so angry that he is the god of rain, thunder, lightning. He's the old, storm god, right? So he tells, he's screwing around right and left with everything that walks.
Yeah, he fertilizes everything.
Like the rain. And
Yes.
she is the goddess of marriage, and she's true to the marriage. In Latin, her name is Juno, which is why brides get married in June, because it's sacred to the goddess of marriage, Juno.
Interesting.
So she's tied to the marriage. She represents bonds and tying. So she represents the marriage vow, and she is true to it forever. And her husband, Zeus, he screws around right and left all over the place. So he tells her, how would this be if I was true to one woman? I'm the rain. So then you'd see the earth in one garden is teeming with life, and the rest of the whole earth is barren. Yeah, that makes sense. So you got to let me fool around. Well, he's going to anyway. And the gods say, they make fun of Zeus. See how one story will lead to 100.
Yeah, yes, they're all connected.
Him that he has so many lovers, but they're all female. Is he prejudiced against male lovers? And so Zeus said, well, okay, I'll show you. And he goes and gets himself one male lover. Just so he can show, yes, I do have a male lover.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
Persian boy Ganymede, who keeps his eagle and is the cupbearer to Zeus, his one male lover. And everybody else, he screws right and left. Okay, so Hera, and he has all these children all over the place. And he won't give Hera a child. So Hera says, all right, you're screwing around. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. She goes off and gets pregnant herself.
Oh,
meaning
wow.
It's called parthenogenesis. It's a virgin. Parthenos means virgin, and the Parthenon means the virgin's temple, Athena's temple. She decides to conceive her own baby all by herself, no father. There's literally no father.
This is a bit like Parvati. Parvati doesn't get pregnant from Shiva, and she makes Ganesha. She makes Ganesha from sandalwood.
Ah, really? I didn't know that one. Oh, see? Cool.
Yes.
That's called parthenogenesis. Yeah, and there are creatures who do it. The female becomes pregnant all by herself, right? So, but she's a distorted anima figure. So she has two sons. She does this twice, and neither of them turn out too well, because that's her animus then, right? Her masculine expression. The first one is Hephaestus.
Yes.
Called Vulcan in the Latin. And when he's born, he's old already. And there's something wrong with him. He's lame or something. His feet are on backwards, or he's lame, he's ugly. She's very embarrassed. And she doesn't want anyone to know what she did. It's a distortion because she had no father, And so she throws him off Mount Olympus, and he falls and plunks into the sea, goes down into the sea, And the Nereids, the goddesses of the sea, they find him, and they raise him under the water there, and he becomes a fantastic smith.
Yes.
Makes beautiful jewelry and all of the weapons. And later, one of the sea goddesses is walking and is on Mount Olympus, is wearing this beautiful brooch, of gold. And Hera says, "Oh, where'd you get that?" "Oh, we have this god under the sea. He makes this. He made this for you." "Where'd he come from?" "Oh, he just flung down one day, Kind of lame, but it doesn't matter under the sea. And she knows, by the way, that's her son. And she gets him up, brings him up, to Mount Olympus, makes him one of the 12 Olympians.
Wow.
He's a distortion, you see. He's given in marriage the greatest goddess, Aphrodite. So the marriage repeats itself. So she screws around right and left all over the place, and he's the marriage vow. You see, and then Hera gives birth by herself again a second time to the god Ares.
Yes.
And Ares
can I just say, this is so similar to Parvati because she has
Yeah.
her other son is
Kartikeya.
Skanda. Kartikeya,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yes, the same god. And he's also ejected from the head of Shiva. Yes,
Oh,
it's
isn't that great?
yes,
See?
and he's fed. He's not fed or looked after by his mother because he's too hot. So he's also thrown into the river. The river spits him out, and then he's
Uh-huh.
looked after by the Pleiades. The yes, 7 heads. That's why he has 7 heads because he
Uh-huh.
7 breasts. Crazy, isn't it?
Man,
Very
it
similar.
is. Now, well, what we know is that the Greeks and the Aryans of India were related. See,
Mm.
they came from Russia. They came down into India and over
Oh,
into Europe.
yes.
So their traditions are related, although these are Shivite traditions.
Okay.
But anyway, it's a hybrid. It all mixes
Yes.
together. Yeah. So
Okay.
Hera's two sons are distorted versions of Anonymous.
Yes.
Ares just lives for war and battle and fighting, and he famously will leap to the other side, change sides in a battle. If the other side's winning, he will change sides.
Oh, serious?
All he loves is the thrill of battle. So it's kind of a distortion. Today we call it hyper masculine or toxic masculinity. So
Yes.
it's amazing. She's a repressed figure in the Olympian system, and her expressions, masculine expressions or animus, are both
Opposite. Yeah.
distorted.
Yeah. Of
The
course.
original Hera was triune and was a great goddess in and of herself, as was Aphrodite. You see,
Wow. Yeah.
same
Very
love story.
interesting. Where can you find out more about this? Which books tell about these?
Take my class.
Take your class. Okay.
Gosh,
Good.
I
Good plug in there, Sharon.
now that I'm retired. But there's a wonderful book called The Myth of the Goddess by Jules Cashford and Anne Baring, I think. They're going to cover all kinds of stuff there. And then Carl Karenyi, who worked with Jung, wrote on Hera, Zeus and Hera, and the sacred marriage.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Karenyi wrote, and then James Hillman, Neil Jungian wrote on Athena, and I believe on Hera.
Mhm.
She's a denied great goddess. So
Mm.
she appears all distorted. So your comment, you can never warm up to Hera because she's a bitchy, nasty thing. See,
Mhm.
it's right.
Yeah,
It's true. That's the
yeah,
distortion.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I saw my mother a lot like that. My mother was very much this distorted Hera type because she was
Swallowed
so frustrated.
down, swallowed. They can
Yeah,
only work through their
shut up.
man.
Yes, exactly. So you have to manipulate, coerce through emotions and blackmail.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
in
no,
our
I
own
know it. I know it. And can we just reference
revolution.
this back to why is this so important to understand all this in present day? Because in one way, I feel like collectively, as a conscious being, we're all moving to seeking more empowerment. Like you see, there's a common cry coming from inner empowerment. We all seek empowerment. There's more and more people talking about this, like even
Yeah.
big names and business people. How do you see that? What do you see as manifesting as the collective?
Well, in Jungian terms, yeah, these are powerful experiences and emotions, yeah.
Mm.
But we're also seeking what he would call soul evolution.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
psyche seeks to evolve to experience itself as a whole. So
Mm.
his final goal in the Jungian system is what he calls wholeness.
Mm.
Wholeness is a word out of the Indo-European root that's related to these words holy, whole, holy, health, healthy. Halography, halon, you see,
Mm.
uh, holistic. All
Mhm.
right, so what's healthy is what's whole, and it's also holy.
Mm.
Okay, so, and how do you get to wholeness, which would equate to health and psychological health?
Mhm.
Well, you combine the opposites, you thought. We need the masculine, we need the feminine. If
Mhm.
we can unite them, every one of us needs the masculine and feminine expression, then we wouldn't keep producing these distortions of the masculine and the feminine, such as the hyper masculine type A, what did we call him? Toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't keep producing the ultra
Meet Mary.
meek little wallflower, tiny little timid thing either.
Yes.
That's neither of those are healthy. So
Mm.
every one of us needs to move toward health, wholeness,
Yes.
find anima and animus within ourselves so that we can represent a healthy model of the masculine and the feminine. And then the old and the young, the up and the down, the dark and the light,
Mm.
the positive and the negative. So a very important category in Jungian thought is what he calls the shadow. The shadow is this dark side of the self. That's what I wrote about in my book, that the devil is the shadow side of God, which God has projected out and refuses to incorporate. So it's a repressed shadow. That's why it's all distorted and
Mm.
monstrous, as I was just talking about with Hera. So Pan
Mm.
is the healthy God with the horns, the goat God, and he represents the shadow. The shadow is the animal self, the bestial, wild self, the emotions, the power. Is a parallel to Freud's concept of the id. But Freud thought the id has to be severely repressed to live in society at all. And Jung differs from that absolutely. And he says that's what's going to give you problems in society. This is why I'm not saying this is the one reason why, but this is a big underlying reason
Yeah.
that we have shootings in America. It's like on a daily basis, mass shootings. It's crazy. And
Really?
get, assault weapons. This year is 20, today's the 25th of January. We've already had like 36 mass shootings.
Oh,
It's crazy. So the repressed shadow, the collective shadow or dark side or animal side has
yes.
been under severe repression for,
Yeah.
as I trace it, maybe 2,500 years. It
Yeah.
didn't start with the Christians. It
Oh,
starts with philosophers, with Plato, who became the great, intellectual master, and Christianity derives from Platonism to an extent. So
yeah.
Plato is the first to sever the body from the
From psych.
mind,
Yeah.
right? And that the eternal is perfect, and it isn't in this world because nothing in this world is eternal.
Yeah.
Everything made of matter is subject to decay. So the truth is elsewhere, transcendental, and
Yes.
the Christians call that heaven.
Yes.
So anything here is a filthy mess, and you have to ignore it and meditate and get out of it and get to heaven.
Transcend. Forget this world. Forget your body.
Yeah,
And
forget
therefore, yeah, don't do anything in this world. Don't worry, you'll go to heaven. It'll be all right. Yeah. And
the
therefore, stay meek.
started it. Yeah, and then it atrophies.
Yeah.
So the body has a terrible reputation in, and of course, it's picked up in the 2,000 years of the Christian history,
Yeah.
where the flesh, is evil and sinful, and
Yeah.
the
Desire,
soul.
emotions should be
So
suppressed.
I quote from Paul in my book, who says two great things. First of all, he says two horrible things that show what I'm talking about perfectly.
Okay.
Says, the body is sown in dishonor. So
Wow.
the process that brings all of us to life is dishonorable, is disgusting, it's
Yeah.
filthy.
But I think a lot of people even have this concept, even though they
Of
totally disagree with
course.
philosophy.
Yeah. And then the other thing he says is, nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh. There's nothing good in my flesh. See? So he starts, well, he didn't start, he gets it from Plato,
Yeah. Continues
This
the
clear
tradition.
split between body and spirit, flesh and spirit, and the terrible denigration of the flesh and everything about it. Sexuality gets to be severely repressed. That's why it's all distorted and ugly and twisted to this day.
Yeah. And I think like the gender uh, conversations people are having are still an extension of this. It's not a solution.
Right.
It's still a frustrated aspect of identity, and knowing there's something inherently very wrong with our society and the way we go about things and relate to each other. Yesterday, so I had this workshop about emotions, and there was 12 very young people sitting around the table, And I was explaining that to emote, it's to release, it's to express, it's to
Motion outward.
share with others and create this cohesion between the social interaction of what is your subjective experience. And every subjective experience is just as valuable as the others. And you saw some, especially the women, they were more willing to go into this, but some of the men were so afraid. They didn't even want to speak. Like, I asked questions, and even just to put up your hand for certain things.
Yeah.
So much repression, so much.
See, they've been conditioned to not feel their feelings.
Yeah,
And
or
then
not share.
yeah,
Or
and
not
they don't
even
share.
know. Yeah,
Well,
they
they
shut
feel
up.
feelings. And
Yeah.
Jung actually ties that directly to heart disease,
Yes.
prevalence of it in society, especially among men.
Heart
Because
disease,
the heart is
MS,
struggling.
there's Gabor Maté. You know Gabor Maté? No, he was a he worked in hospice for a long time. He's just a physician, but he's written many books, and one of his books is called When the Body Says No. And because he worked with people at the end of their life, he really figured out like which emotional suppressions, like people who suppress their anger, they had a lot of cancer, and people who had heart diseases or MS, they suppressed resentment, and all the different emotions were linked to different expressions of the body. Because if you don't express it verbally or socially or emotionally, it's going to be expressed physically at one point. Yeah, well, then it becomes a physical issue.
Dysfunctional. That's right. See, so we're back to the concept of health for
Yeah.
the body and the soul, which is whole.
Yes.
And quality of the
It's
whole.
mind or body. The mind and body, they don't distinguish. Yeah, but the mind and body don't distinguish from each other.
And Jung's comment that everything in the psyche wants to express itself.
Yeah.
The expression is the cure or the opposite of repression.
Yes.
It needs to be expressed, right? And what we want to combine here, the two opposites to create a condition of wholeness, that is health, would be the ego and the shadow, and the feelings, thinking and feelings. So society conditions all of us, especially men, to be thinkers and doers and not feel anything.
Yeah.
So their feelings get all bottled up, and just as you say, it'll show up in your body somewhere, right? It's not healthy. The society's not healthy because it's not whole.
But even just the fact that your thoughts or your feelings become a physical reality, that just shows that the body and mind are not separate.
Right.
It's a very clear message that there is no difference. Yeah.
Body knowledge. That's right. Yeah, it's obviously connected.
Yeah.
We need a holistic view.
Yeah.
We've gone different directions, but that's kind of a background, the goddess Hera. But I went off into that in the indigenous.
Yeah, but I think it's a good starting point to see why is Hera so important? Why is the journey so important? Yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to, I have this material here. I don't need to go into it all about the hero's journey and the stages of the hero's journey. How the hero, leaves the ordinary. Oh gosh, it's supposed to be all at my fingertips. See,
don't worry. You've got it.
To the quest, the call, and each of us, we're supposed to think of our own lives in this regard. Each of us is on their heroic journey. That's why it's going to call forth heroic effort from you by the time life is done with you, right? But some of us, depending on our choices, now life will make you into a hero one way or another. Get up and go to work all the time, every day, right? But there's a dynamic in alchemy. Jung loved alchemy. He said everything fell into place for him when he discovered alchemy. And alchemy is a grand hero's journey. The tarot imagery is a grand hero's journey from the card 0 to 21. That's a hero's journey. You find the hero's journey everywhere. He talked about the alchemical process, and all through stage after stage after stage, you're creating the diamond or the gem, which is what the earth is doing. And you burn off the dross. The dross is unnecessary. Cut away the fat, get to the kernel. and then you're going to have the gemstone. Okay, so in our lives, and folks, I'm sure, as I said, life will bring you to heroic action one way or another. Yeah. But some people are opting for what I call anesthetization, an anesthetized life. Yes. Some people, and this I say, especially in the US, the society encourages everyone to go to sleep.
And it's not just the US. It's everywhere. It's the whole world over, because the Western society, the Western culture has just spread like a disease.
So today it's the cell phone that is the agent of anesthetization, meaning, go to sleep, get your drug of choice, your beer or whatever, put yourself out on the couch every night, watch your TV.
Yourself, yeah,
get up and do it again until you feel, well, life is meaningless. And this is what Jung thought the midlife crisis is all about.
Yeah, so you finally realize.
And that's too late. And we have another term here, category, called the authentic life, authenticity. That's the heroic life. The hero is living the authentic path. Now you see what word is embedded in this word authenticity, the word author, to author.
Yes.
If you're authoring your own path and you have decided, you're not going to do what mom and dad wanted necessarily, you're going to become a yoga instructor, you're going to delve into the profound depths of yoga philosophy, you're going to be, fill your life with awe and amazement over the grand spiritual tradition, of India and elsewhere. And that's your own path. You authored it.
So thank you everyone for staying to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I really love doing these talks with these amazing people. And if you want to know more, just take a look in the show notes. There's plenty of links and ways to connect with either the guest or myself. If you want to work with us or find out more about us, just check out the information in the show notes. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend or week, and you'll be hearing from me next week. Bye.